Well, good morning, everybody. As Jenny said, my name's Peter Moore, Liverpool born and bred. Moved here to America about 42 years ago. Thought I could play, thought I could coach, don't neither. Ended up selling soccer shoes for a company called Patrick. Anybody remember Patrick Boots, Kevin Keegan, Michelle Platini? Man, it's a young crowd already. Moved to Boston, Reebok, head of global sports for Reebok, helped MLS get going in the days of Doug Logan and Randy Bernstein. Then got into video games, got called by an executive recruiter to move back to San Francisco to be president of Sega and launch the Sega Dreamcast. Moved up at the behest of Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer up to rainy Seattle, which reminded me of Manchester on a good day, for 5 years to run the Xbox business, launch the Xbox 360, launch Xbox Live, and then got a call again from an executive recruiter. Come on back down to the Bay Area, be president of EA Sports, and run the FIFA game, formerly known as FIFA franchise, Madden, games you're all very familiar with, or your kids are very familiar with. And then got a call from an executive recruiter in the summer of 2016. Would you ever move back to the UK? Looked out the window, remember this moment like it was yesterday. Sun was shining, it's beautiful. I said, heck no. What if it was to be CEO of Liverpool Football Club? And when you have those moments, and I hope you all have those moments in your life of thinking back, my dad first took me to Anfield in November of 1959. Liverpool 4, Leyton Orient 3. Remember it kind of like it was yesterday. That allowed me to get back and serve my club and my city for 3 seasons, including a COVID season. And eventually come back with my wife, Debbie, who braved California Girl, braved the weather off the Irish Sea for 3 years. Worked for Unity Technologies on volumetric capture, head of sports and live entertainment. And now, as Jenny mentioned, I am now the proud owner of a brand new professional team in our home of Santa Barbara Sky FC.
You guys see why I let him do that instead of trying to put that all into words. Peter, so I want to start with your time with Liverpool, because a lot of people immediately pick their head in when you say Liverpool, deservingly so. And you have talked about how your role was to stay out of Jurgen Klopp's way and allow his team to win trophies. When you're the CEO, you're focused on the business aspect of that. And while so many of us, actually probably none of us, will be CEOs of Champion League winning teams, what does that entail? What was it?
Well, that's a great question, because my job description was one paragraph, which was basically run the business. It was a time when my predecessor, Ian Ayre, many of you know him as a general manager at Nashville, but for 10 years was the CEO at Liverpool. His role and what became my role were very different. This, again, American ownership, Fenway Sports Group, Boston Red Sox, Pittsburgh Penguins, Roush Fenway Racing in NASCAR, but in particular the Red Sox, and this concept of Moneyball and using data and analytics to identify talent. And certainly Liverpool, under the auspices of the sporting director, Michael Edwards, was moving that way. So fundamentally, Jurgen was obviously already there the year before as the manager. Michael was running this new environment as a sporting director, which was new to Liverpool. My predecessor, Ian, got involved in the transfer business. I did not get involved and actually wanted nothing to do with that. Billy Hogan, who's now my successor, ran the commercial business and taking on the might of Manchester United and Manchester City in the commercial realms. And my job was to run the business, to manage the 800 people who work for Liverpool Football Club who don't kick a ball, manage all of the game day operations, fan engagement, which we'll talk about, which at that time was a little precarious with Liverpool and ownership. And so the entire business, anything other than actually playing the game, was mine. And we were creating what you will know in business as a virtuous cycle. In a very simple way, my job and my team's job was to create revenue opportunities, to build money to come in, to buy better players, then you would get sponsors that would come in because you're winning more games and they were paying more money. And you have this concept in football of a classic virtuous cycle. Get better players, win more games, bring in bigger sponsors, get better players as a result of that. And that's where the Alisson Beckers and the Virgil van Dijks of this world come into play. And you remember that period in Liverpool's history in 2017-18 as Jurgen was building that squad. My job and my team's job was to continue to provide him with the fuel, stay out of the way, and let him win games.
Okay, so when we talk about the business aspect, there are so many different pillars in that. One of them that I find very interesting because I work in it is the content aspect, understanding that content is king and how it drives fandom, because one of the things is that a lot of people won't get to go to a Liverpool game ever in their lives, but there are Liverpool fans all over the world. How do you capitalize on that with the content that you create?
Well, when I joined Liverpool, it was my first ever engagement in football. I mean, I'm a video game guy and played the game and loved the game and a Liverpool fan, but what do I know about running a football club? But I did know about running multi-billion-dollar operations that engaged hundreds of millions of people. And at EA, we had about 300 million gamers that interact with us every single month. In video games, you have a very simple concept. Think of a funnel, and it's called AEM. Acquire, engage, monetize. Now, monetize is a word I would never use in Liverpool publicly, but the idea of, let's call it free-to-play games, which instead of paying $60, you open that funnel wide. In football parlance, how many fans can you identify? Their names, their addresses, what shirt size they are, whether they'll ever come to Liverpool, get their credit card number, and then provide them with content that engages them all day and every day. If you follow Liverpool Football Club, today you will see content of the players after training, engaging with each other. The 99% of the 400, 500 million fans that put their hand up and say, I follow Liverpool, will never get to Anfield. So you have to find alternate ways to engage them, to keep them engaged with the club, to be able to ultimately monetize them in different ways, subscriptions, merchandise, and maybe that once-in-a-lifetime trip that they will make to Liverpool. To that point as well, when I first arrived at Liverpool, I engaged with the city council and the mayor's office and said, I asked my team, what do we bring to the city of Liverpool financially? And the answer I got was a lot of money. Now, as a Silicon Valley guy, a lot of money wasn't a good answer for me. So we did an economic impact report, what a football club means to a city, to an environment that is a working class city in particular. Because the moment you get there, you realize you can't get a hotel reservation, you can't get a restaurant reservation, you can't get a taxi. That Liverpool Airport, John Lennon International Liverpool Airport on Saturday mornings is full of chartered flights coming in from Western Europe, from Scandinavia, where we have a huge fan base. So we calculated with Deloitte that we bring about £500 million every season into the city of Liverpool, what's known as GVA, gross value add to that city's economy. And as you run football clubs, understanding what you do for the community and the economy of the community is absolutely critical to justify your place there. So that was very important. And rather controversially, I believed as a Scouser, as a Liverpudlian, that I needed to engage with the fans through social media. I can tell you that my ownership group in Boston didn't look upon that kindly, shall we say. I felt it was needed. I felt that there needed to be a guy that is living in Liverpool, walking the streets of Liverpool every single day, getting advice from Liverpool fans that whenever I went out, that I needed to engage with them and repair some of the damage, and I put damage in quotation marks, that have been caused. They're absentee owners. They're Americans. I don't expect them to be able to engage in the way that I had the benefit of a lad who first went to Anfield in 1959 had with Liverpool fans. And I'll just finish by saying one of the things that I always feel good about when I go back to Liverpool, which I did 3 weeks ago, is not thanks for winning the Champions League, the Club World Cup, the Premier League. They always say to me, almost verbatim, you made me feel closer to the club. And that's all I needed.
So we'll get back to the fan aspect because I think that that's so important, right? The local community thing. But one thing that I noticed is that people started writing when you talked about the economic impact, because that is so important. We are bringing a World Cup to the United States, North America, Mexico, Canada as well. And that's something that when soccer is not the biggest thing in this country, a lot of sponsors or whatever it may be don't understand the economic impact that football can have. So how do you let people know the spectacle that is Liverpool, that is hosting a World Cup, that is having football come to your town, how it affects everything in the local community?
When I got to Liverpool, as I said, my job description was a little sparse, and it was a job that was evolving. And in the end, I figured out what I should do to bring value to that city. And it ended up being 4 C's. First of all, it was culture. how do we make this club feel Liverpudlian again? Something that was not only required in the UK, but all around the world, the essence. And we became a marketing thing ultimately, of this means more. And go look at that online, which is the voice of Jurgen Klopp and footage about the city of Liverpool and words that try to explain why it means more. It seems arrogant, and of course, football means a lot to cities, but to Liverpool, with the tragedies of Heysel and Hillsborough and everything that is this unique makeup of Liverpool, that we decided it means more, and so we developed culture. Community was critical. This is a club in which it stood on the shoulders of giants, from Ian St. John to Roger Hunt to Ron Yates to David Fairclough, who's with us today. These are the people that, when I talk to people, they don't go to see Liverpool. They will say, I can't believe I'm going to Anfield. Yes, they're going to see Liverpool, but going to Anfield. Shankly, you'll never walk alone. The gates, the pubs around the stadium itself, everything that makes up what Liverpool is so special. And look, there's great clubs around the world that could probably submit the same bill. But as an administrator, you capture what is special about your club, you package it up bluntly, and then you make sure that everybody gets to experience that. And Liverpool has tragedy, uniqueness, triumph, despair. All of that comes together when you talk about the community that gets behind it, both local and global. And I coined a phrase pretty quickly on, as we were managing some of the little bit of drama and nastiness of being a football club that was deemed global, and local lads couldn't get a ticket to go to Anfield. And when I got there, there was a little bit of, he doesn't look like he's from here. And we put a stop to that. We absolutely put a stop to that, and made the club. So we said local heart, global pulse, because that's what we are as a football club. And there are other football clubs. You can say that about a Barcelona, potentially a Manchester United, Bayern Munich. You have a local heart, but you're powered by a global pulse. Now, what that powering is typically financial and engagement, but that's what we're able to do. Third thing was civic, sorry. So it was very much about supporting the city in which you were playing. And that civic relationship I built with the mayor, with the chief of police, with the city council, and going to see them and making sure they understood what we were able to do was absolutely critical. I'll stop right there because I know I'm going on. But those were the things that eventually I landed on as part of my job. And it became very important to me that my entire staff, and I actually wrote a manifesto about the Liverpool way, my entire staff believed and understood that.
I think we use Liverpool as a great, point to look at. But when you're talking to U.S. soccer fans, because we are in the U.S. right now, they don't have that history, right? You talk about going to a game with your dad and how that brought you in to be a Liverpool fan, and then the full circle of going back and what that meant to the community. When football, soccer is not in that position to do that, and you have newer clubs, newer MLS clubs that don't have that history for fan base, how do you engage, acquire, engage, and then eventually monetize for people that are starting different clubs?
I arrived here in the late 70s to coach and play in Cleveland, Ohio, in North Olmsted, Cleveland, Ohio, and became a little bit of voyeur of what's going on. I always remember it being called a communist game. I mean, somebody would say, I would go see American football coach. I played at Baldwin Wallace College, part of the Cleveland Cobras organization. Football coach, it's a communist game. Keep your guys off my field. Today, if we fast forward to today, whether it's Welcome to Wrexham, Ted Lasso, Messi to Miami, the game has changed. I've watched it over 40 years changed. And in the days when I first got here, there was always this belief is that when these kids are running around playing swarm ball, grew up, went through club soccer, travel teams, played in the ODP, the Olympic Development Squads, that they would have kids. All of a sudden, those parents on the sidelines who would scream in the 70s and 80s, kick it, because that's as much as they knew, became more nuanced, became more intelligent, understood the game. And I will say, and CBS to my right, NBC has done a brilliant job. When they acquired the rights from Fox Soccer, if you remember those days, and we're blessed here. You don't realize that the 3 o'clock games in England are blacked out. We are blessed here to see every single game. And the NBC investment of those Saturday mornings, which used to be cartoons. Now the NBC, and everybody watches these games. And so having that exposure to the game, and ultimately not talking down, as we used to as commentators, to the American soccer fan, was critical. We're now, I believe, a fully developed, multi-generational soccer country that is capable of churning out the best. It's still going to take decades to continue. Liverpool's 140 years old. I mean, so it requires that. But we're now multi-generational, and we weren't when I first came here. And so when I watch a youth game now and I listen to the parents, I'm hearing intelligent coaching rather than screaming that they don't know what's going on, so they just yell, kick it. And that multi-generational key and the content and the exposure we get to the game, I don't want to say it's become mainstream, but it starts to feel like we're mainstream.
So I want to get back to the lessons, right? Because there are a lot of, we'll say MLS, NWSL, all of these newer teams that don't have the history like you're mentioning. What is your, I guess, number one tip after being CEO at Liverpool that they need to focus on? We talked about content, engaging content, and how that allows the fans to feel closer to the club no matter where they are. But at the local level, how do you make sure to keep these fans coming?
There's a banner on the Kop that says, football without fans is nothing. And that's what it is. Right next to the banner that says, unity is strength. And the ability for you to engage with your community, your fans, make them feel part of the club, engage them in forums, make them feel closer to the club is critical. If I have a criticism about where the game is at right now, and I don't want to criticize MLS, but you don't want to be a franchise. You don't want to be seen as a corporate entity. You don't want to be seen as something that comes and goes, and as unfortunately we often see. You want to be part of the fabric of that community. Your dad went to watch them play. Ultimately, you can look back in 20 years, your granddad was there, and that becomes it. Football without fans is nothing. We learned that during COVID. I had the bizarre experience of going to the final 9 games during the COVID season of the Premier League. We were so close, Liverpool, to getting our Premier League trophy in front of fans. I will never forget getting a call from Richard Masters, the CEO of the Premier League, as we were looking at this specter looming of COVID. And we were about to play away at Everton. And then if we'd have beaten Everton, we would have won the league in March with beating Crystal Palace at Anfield. We never got to Everton. Mikel Arteta getting COVID clearly changed everything in the United Kingdom. And so the league was then abandoned. As many of you know then, we then dove into, I don't want to say 3 times a week with the Premier League. There were teams that wanted null and void. Guess what? The teams that were in relegation. But we knew that the Sky Sports, the B-Sky Bs, the NBCs in this country, plus I think having football back on the television was as much of a morale boost, even though behind closed doors. And I was proud to say that the EA Sports FIFA soundtrack for the first few games was streamed behind the game, just to give it a little bit of bite. But that element of bringing football back was key, I think, to us getting through COVID. But it was a tough 9 days in a closed stadium with no fans. I remember going to St. James's Park with my wife, Debbie. There was 2 of us. There was 4 Newcastle executives, and there was 2 Liverpool executives, and 59,800 empty seats. And it was bizarre. And it made you appreciate what an atmospheric stadium, of which there are hundreds around the world, does for the game itself.
I remember football matches being such a positive during COVID. That is like the one release that you have of happiness, even when it's behind closed doors. So, and you end up winning that one. But all of this experience leads you to now start a football club from scratch. You're founding owner of Santa Barbara Sky FC. How do you start a football club from scratch? Because that is not an easy feat, and it doesn't happen many times.
Yeah, once I got back, my wife and I returned back to California and settled in Montecito, California in Santa Barbara. USL executives, God bless them, figured out that the ex-CEO of Liverpool was there. For a market they had eagerly tried to engage and get a foothold in. I met with USL, Justin Papadakis, who's the deputy CEO, and Dan Holman, who's the executive vice president. and infamously said, look, I'll help you get it going. I'll be an engaged minority owner, in my exact words. Well, 2 months later, we're doing everything. And literally, as Jenny says, it was a clean sheet of paper. I'm looking at a bunch of names. I go, Santa Barbara Sky, that's brilliant. We engage with a very talented young man in New York, Chris Payne, who develops in this country a full-time business developing brand positioning for professional soccer teams. Looked at the uniqueness, and I said, it's got to be unique to Santa Barbara. So the terracotta tiles, the Spanish tiles, are our colors. The midnight blue of a south-facing sky, even though we're on the West Coast, Santa Barbara faces south. And we built the club. And it's taken us what is now 3 years to build this club, to the point where we're ready to actually this morning make an announcement about what we're doing and where we're going.
Do you want to lead off there, or do you want me to? Go ahead. Go ahead.
And unfortunately, it leaked overnight, but Santa Barbara Sky FC will commence play in the USL Championship, commencing 2026 at Harder Stadium on the campus of University of California, Santa Barbara, a 17,000-seater soccer-specific stadium. This has been a long journey getting there. We're delighted to, well, thank you. We'll see. I'll come back in a few years, see you're still applauding. But it is amazing soccer community. We're on the Central Coast. The community will benefit from having football as part of its fabric. We do not have a professional sports team in Santa Barbara, and one of the rationales, Jenny, for building the club is when I got there, talking to young players. There's a great youth program there. I said, who do you want to play for? Oh, I want to play for the LA Galaxy. I want to play for the San Jose Earthquakes. And it's like, why don't you want to play for Santa Barbara? I grew up in Liverpool. I wanted to play from Liverpool. I was never going to play for Liverpool, but that aspiration of your team there, you dreamt of being, in my case, Ian St. John, Roger Hunt, Ian Callahan, David Fairclough. David and I are the same age, so I didn't dream of being David. But from the perspective of the ability for you to just dream for something locally rather than go up north to San Jose or down south to LA was key. And building a club, a lot of work is the answer to how you do it, but building a club that generations from now, and I'll be long gone, that can play for and have young people, as we had in Liverpool in the 50s and 60s, kicking balls around and just dreaming of being that player and playing at Harder Stadium is why we've done this.
I love this for you, and congratulations. And I see our time is up, but I have one thing. When you're building this club locally, what goes into that, right? There's so many aspects. You're talking about the stadium, acquiring the stadium, getting sponsorships, the players, the coach, everything from scratch. I mean, take me through the money that you've put in yourself. I was talking to Debbie about it. Debbie was like, it's coming out of our pockets right now.
I think that the community is engaged, believes in it. We've already got, without trying, 1,200 season ticket deposits. So you've got, and hopefully in the next 30 minutes, that's going to increase as everything goes live. But it is a labor of love, and it is convincing people. So there is enough naysayers there that will say, you're not a soccer community. This city has never had a professional sports team in 30 years. It's a non-progressive city. All of the barriers that you have to beat down. It's the power of personality. It's boots on the ground. In my case, engaging with the Chamber of Commerce, going to see Visit Santa Barbara, meeting with the sponsors, beer, healthcare, auto. I mean, that's what you have to do. This is grassroots stuff when you're building a club that doesn't have a sponsor, doesn't have an advertiser, doesn't have a player, doesn't have a coach. You build it from the bottom up, and that's where we're at.
Incredible feat. Congratulations. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.